بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. سلام علیکم. مستقلین آذربایجانین یرمی بشین ایلی مناسبتی لا دولتی نیز و ملتی نیزی تبریک ادیرم. I hope I could read it rightly. So it's really a pleasure to be here today. I congratulate you all for this very beautiful moment of independence and 25 years of achievement. I'm so impressed by Azerbaijan. I have to start by a religious confession. I have been a student of Soviet studies for a long time in the United States. I have read so much about this part of the world, but I have to confess it's my first time in Azerbaijan. And the readings is something, and seeing from within is something else, and I owe this, let's say, new experience to Dr. Farhad Mohammadov and his colleagues, and I thank them for inviting me. Being in this country for 2 days and listening to different talks, and being at, of course, in a meeting which is not official in a way, and I have no hair, but I have two hats, diplomatic and academic. I want to use my academic hat, but usually I start by a joke, if I'm allowed. Maybe it's because of my American education. Dr. Gurshan was referring to it. Of course, the reason that I say because I want to have a different outlook in a way. The joke is saying, do you know what's the difference between a professor, an ambassador, and a general? Have you heard it? The answer is, if you ask a general a question, and you hear yes, the answer is yes. If you hear no, the answer is really no. If you hear maybe, that person is not a general, because generals should be very precise, dead on the mark, and so on and so forth. But if you ask an ambassador, of course, it is a joke. I was ambassador personally. And you hear yes, the real answer is maybe. If you hear maybe, the real answer is no. And if you hear no, that person is not an ambassador. And scholars, professors, if you ask them a question, you never hear yes or no. They would say, on the one hand is this, on the other is this, we need conceptual framework. So what I do today is providing you a conceptual framework of how I see Azerbaijan during the last 25 years. So the question in my conceptual framework is, how can we analyze, conceptualize, and understand Azerbaijan in the last 25 years from, let's say, an Iranian perspective, not the Iranian perspective, as an Iranian academician? My answer is in a way very easy. It is ABC. A, admiration and appreciation. B is bridge and betweenness. And C is cooperation and coexistence. Let me explain each of these concepts based upon my understanding a little bit. Appreciation of what? And admiration of what? A. I think, first of all, admiration of independence itself. Independence may not be understood by some countries or some nation states, but we in Iran understand it. Independence means you can decide on your own destiny. And you are the main decision maker on the destiny of your country. Iran nominally had independence, but we didn't have really. This is why in the Iranian Revolution, the motto of revolution, you know, any revolution has a motto, like French Revolution, they had égalité, liberté, and equalité. The Iranian Revolution had independence, استقلال, آزادی، جمهوری اسلامی, independence, liberty, and Islamic Republic. And for me as an observer and as an Iranian, what I like about the Iranian Revolution most personally is independence, because we decide on our own. And I think this is a very significant pillar of any real nation, to decide on its own. And I think in this way, Azerbaijan didn't get its independence easily. Yesterday I saw the monument and the number of people who were martyred and a lot of struggle. I think it was Azerbaijan is not a new nation. It got its independence 25 years ago, but it was a historical, very culturally important nation. But I think this independence requires admiration, and keeping this independence also requires appreciation. Furthermore, I think I appreciate personally Azerbaijan for being able to construct an identity which is a positive identity. All nations develop identities, and identities, some argue, are constructive processes. What I see is a positive identity building process. And I think this requires so much appreciation. Why? Because there are a lot of identities in this world which are built on negativities. And I think this positive outlook requires really attention. Furthermore, what's impressive in this regard, I think, is the idea which I felt in this country is inclusiveness. So it's not an exclusivist idea or mentality. It's not based on a racist, a narrow narrative of very exclusive readings. It is inclusiveness. So I think this requires admiration and appreciation. Now let me go to my B. So are you with my conceptual framework? I finished A, I go to B. Bridge and betweenness. I think all of the speakers refer to this concept of how Azerbaijan is connecting North and South, East and the West, and different organizations, different institutions. I think this idea of being the bridge is really implemented in action. It is not an idea. So now Azerbaijan has a record of showing that it has acted as a bridge. And I think this betweenness requires a lot of smartness. Actually, yesterday I was talking with our Azerbaijani colleagues, and I said, a small is a smart. You know, big powers, they make mistakes, and since they have a lot of resources available, and the availability of the resources cover their mistakes. But we, as small as it may be, should be very attentive to over ramifications of decisions. So actually, before even coming to here, I'm looking as a teacher of international relations on small states and small entities, small players, and I have come to this conclusion that smalls are much smarter than the biggers. And I can prove it empirically, scientifically, with data and evidence. And I think when we talk about being betweenness, it doesn't mean you don't have any position. It doesn't mean that you like all the positions that they are taken, but you identify your own positioning by being the connective side and not, let's say, the cutting side and being the bridge. In this regard, all these corridors, all these lines and different ways of communication which Azerbaijan has been able to do so, I think requires to be identified a real bridge. And furthermore, I think what's interesting in this regard is the concept of balancing, not balance of power, but balancing between different interests, between different regions, and between different tendencies. And I think this concept needs to be taken more seriously by outsiders and those who watch this region. Finally, let me go to my C before I receive any note from the chairwoman. C, coexistence and cooperation. I think, at least what I can say from the Iranian side, which we have more data and information, our relationship with Azerbaijan really is suggestive of how coexistence is the key. We are not living in a very easy region. The region is a very difficult region. Actually, sometimes I tell to my European and Western colleagues that you cannot understand our region, you just read about it. But if you live here, now you talk about invasion, occupation, all this sort, and about 1 million people you mentioned being refugees, displaced. These are not easy facts. So the region is a very difficult region, and I think coexistence is a very fundamental principle that we see in our relationship and in the foreign policy of Azerbaijan with our country. And it's interesting, this coexistence comes with cooperation. So we have a huge, let's say, level of cooperation at all levels, on people level. 1 million Azerbaijanis visit Iran. They couldn't visit if there was no good relationship between two states. So I think this 1 million, which almost 1/10 of this country, is by itself one of the most important people-to-people level of interaction, and it is resembling the fact that coexistence is there. Our President Rouhani and President Aliyev have seen each other during the last 3 years 7 times. And I think on, let's say, quantitative analysis, this number of high-level meeting is also reflective of the fact that coexistence and cooperation is there. What's impressive for me is during the very hard time of sanctions against Iran, Azerbaijan never accepted those sanctions. It is also another reflection of cooperation and coexistence. And in English, we have a phrase that a friend in need is a friend indeed. And I think that's very important. Furthermore, where JCPO or the nuclear deal was done, a new chapter was started in our interaction with international players, and the second delegation, trade, economic delegation, the huge one which visited our country, was from Azerbaijan. And actually, I review the record, and I think almost each week we have a type of ministerial level of interaction. I think these are not easily achieved. So it requires to be identified as one of the, let's say, very exemplary relationship based on coexistence and cooperation. And I think it's not exclusive to Iran. I think this is what Azerbaijan is following in other directions. I expect more in this relationship, and I think it will happen. What is interesting and happening in this coexistence and cooperation is what I call multidimensionality of relationship. The relationship is becoming multidimensional. It's not just economic one. It is not just the cultural one. It is not the scientific one, or intelligence and military and so on and so forth. So it is multidimensional, and I think multidimensionalism of a bilateral relationship which is based on cooperation and coexistence, gives, let's say, insurance to the continuity and to the peaceful, let's say, interaction, not just between two nations, I think region. So I think Iran and Azerbaijan are two pillars of stability in this region, and we stand by all the international law principles, so we reject any type of negation of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, and we are, as two neighbors, trying to deepen coexistence and cooperation. So to conclude, again, the question was how I, as an Iranian observer, can or could conceptualize this relationship, or the last 25 years of post-independence. I really do believe independence is key. If Azerbaijan was not independent, we couldn't have this meeting, we couldn't have a lot of other interactions, and I really go for my conceptual framework: A, appreciation of independence, positive identity construction and inclusiveness, and B, the bridge and betweenness, and finally the coexistence and cooperation. I don't know how my Azerbaijani was, but it seems you understood what I did. I end by asking the longevity and continuity of this friendship in Azerbaijan.